So the internet has been in quite the uproar in the past week or two, and it's got me really thinking, does any of this really even matter? Why do we have all this? What's the reason? Well, obviously I can only speak from my own personal experience, my own career trajectory over the past 22 years of making records, and why I have ended up with the gear that I have. But I want to start at the beginning, before I had any of this gear. Was I still making records? Absolutely. Do you need all of this to be able to physically make records? No, of course not. So then what's the point? This is something that I'm genuinely nervous for the recording industry after the past week, is so many people I think are now under the impression that none of it matters. But the problem is if you go all the way down that logic train, all the way to the end of the road, that preamps don't matter, well then next, microphones don't really matter, and then next, tone wood doesn't really matter, like the type of wood your guitar is made out of doesn't really matter, and then next, monitors don't really matter, and then does acoustic treatment really matter? The problem that I'm nervous about for people consuming this sort of content is once you start down that path of nothing matters, you end up at a place where it's actually kind of difficult to make good music. Is it impossible to make music? Of course not. But so much of this stuff that a lot of us have is equally as much about making our jobs easier as it is sounding better. So I started on a DigiDesign 001 interface. This is a very, very old, very, very cheap interface. I made records with it. I had terrible preamps. it was a pretty terrible interface, even for the time. And I made plenty of records on that, and they were fine. But when I upgraded from a 001 to a 003, the difference in converter quality was so shocking that every single thing that I did immediately sounded better, and it wasn't placebo. Now again, I can only tell you from my experience. I'm not trying to sit here and say, trust me, bro, that everything matters and you should buy all this stuff. But the sonic difference between that 001 and the 003 was so obvious that everything sounded so much less harsh, less digital. It sounded so much more natural, so much more open. Now, this is way back in early converter days. I no longer think there's that big of a difference between converters. Is there a difference between converters? Absolutely there is. But I do think we are now at a place where the very cheapest converters that you can buy will allow you to make very, very good music. So if that's the case, what's the point of the different converters? What is the point of spending money on different converters? Well, this HDIO right here that I run from Avid, that is connected to an HDX card. It's a pretty expensive rig. They don't even make this anymore, by the way. Is it the very best sounding interface on planet Earth? No. But the workflow. So yeah, I get to run hardware inserts to my heart's content and never worry about delay compensation. I never have to worry about when I record enable a track, is the singer hearing the delay? How much delay is there? Do I got to change my hardware? I never have to deal with any of that. I can have a mix completely done with tons of hardware running, and the singer says, hey, I need to punch in this vocal, and I don't have to tear the mix back apart to do that. I literally create a new track, hit record, and they're able to record with zero latency while all the hardware is running the mix. The reason I run this rig has quite literally nothing to do with the sound quality and everything to do with the workflow. And so that's the first thing that I think this whole conversation is missing, is a lot of this stuff is about workflow. A lot of this gear has stepped pots. My preamps here, they're stepped pots. That's for ease of recall. Do they sound great? Absolutely. Is it just about their sonic character? Absolutely not. It's about the workflow. My entire mix bus here, where I've got the SPL PQ, the SPL Venos, my signature preamps, the MBT, and the SPL Big. These sound amazing. Don't get me wrong. I truly believe they sound special. But it is as much of a workflow thing as it is a sonic thing. All of them are very easy to recall. I take a song that's completely unmixed, I put all of those on the mix bus, and I tweak them till it sounds the best, and the song is 50% of the way done just because I've done that. So that's the first thing that I want to get across here, workflow. Now, the next thing that I want to discuss here is the sonic differences between stuff. I have said in many, many videos that moving a microphone a single inch is a bigger difference then what kind of microphone you're using, then what kind of preamp you're using, then what kind of compressor you're using, then what kind of interface you're using. But that doesn't mean that the rest of that stuff is pointless or irrelevant. Doesn't mean that it's all the same. It just means that eventually you will get to the point in your music creation journey when moving the microphone, you've kind of got it figured out. I'm not saying everyone has it figured out and that we don't always have stuff to learn. That's not what I'm saying. You get to the point where like you're kind of topping out on this. And this is the exact journey that most of us serious engineers who have been cranking out lots and lots of work for years, this is the thing that we have all been through. We've gotten to the point where this is kind of not changing much for us anymore. So what's the next thing that we can improve? What's the next biggest contributing factor that we can improve? Oftentimes it's a piece of gear. Now, does that mean that the song doesn't matter anymore, or that the performance doesn't matter, or that it's somehow less important than the gear? No, absolutely, of course not. But most of us that have been on this journey, this engineering journey, we're not trying to live at 80%. Let me speak for myself. I'm not trying to live at 80%. I'm trying to live at 101%. I realize 101% is not achievable, but that's the point. The point is I'm trying to live at 101% in my musical journey. And if I truly want to be at 101%, everything matters. Absolutely everything. And so I find the weaknesses in what I'm doing, the things that are able to be improved upon, even if it's only improving it by a small amount, even if it's only improving it by a small amount that most people can't even hear. Now, when I'm still producing someone or when I'm actually mixing, yes, the moves that I'm making, the performances that are recorded, the song itself is by far the most important part. But if you take a 22-year career like I have had and you slowly accumulate all these little improvements, the 001 to the 003 to the HDIO, you take my very first preamps in a crappy console that I was using. I think it was a Mackie. And then I went from my Mackie console to a British-made Allen & Heath console. And that jump sounded significantly better. And then I went from that and I started adding some outboard preamps that had different flavors. Oh, I've got an acoustic guitar that's pretty bright. Well, let's use a little bit darker microphones and a little bit darker preamps like these Coil Audio CA70Ss. And then we don't have to EQ the acoustic guitar to get it to sound awesome. It just sounds awesome. Oh, we have a really dull sounding singer, like a singer that's kind of muffly sounding, their natural voice. Well, we're going to put a bright microphone up like this Manly Reference Cardioid, and we're going to run it through some bright preamps. So not these Coil CA70s, because those are very thick and very woolly. We're going to run them through my signature preamps here because those are very open and they have kind of a pushed aggressive mid-range. And so guess what? Now I have to EQ the vocal less. EQing that vocal less not only lets me get the song done faster, it keeps my perspective fresher while working on the song, which allows me to make a better mix and do less destructive EQ to get the vocal to sound the way that I want it to sound. And then you take a song that has 200 tracks, because sometimes that's what I'm mixing. I don't remember the last time I mixed a song that had under 80 tracks in it. So let's start there. Let's take the minimum. You've got a song that has 80 tracks, and if all of those tracks were the correct mic placement, yes, that's the most important part, but then also the correct microphone choice, the correct preamp choice, the correct compressor choice, now all of a sudden that compounds, just those 4 or 5 variables per each track times 80, that adds up to literally the difference between pushing the faders up in a mix and having to just work my ass off to get it to sound tolerable versus push the faders up and be like, wow, that's 90% of the way there because it sounds finished. And that exact thing is what I'm nervous about, this whole debacle that the internet is in an uproar over. That's what I'm nervous about, that there's going to be a whole generation, there's going to be hundreds of thousands of people that think none of that matters anymore. Now again, that doesn't mean that you can't make music without paying attention to, of course you can make music, and of course you can make great music, and of course you can make Grammy-winning music without paying attention to any of that. Yes, you can. But the longer you're on this path, the longer you do these things as a career, the longer you're cranking out hundreds of songs per year, all this stuff really starts to add up. It adds up because of the workflow. It makes my job easier. It adds up because I'm working faster because it's so much easier, meaning that I'm actually making better music at the end of it because my perspective is staying fresher. So that way I'm making better decisions all the way through the process instead of getting stuck in the muck and bogged down of trying to fix things that maybe don't sound quite as good. And it makes a difference because you times those couple variables across 80 tracks, 120 tracks, 200 tracks, and every one of those little variables, even if any of them on their own aren't enough for the average person to hear the difference between, you add all of those variables up across all these tracks. And now the average person can hear the difference. You have two versions of the exact same song, one version where none of this was done and one version where all of this was done to the very best of anyone's ability. Push the faders up and the average person will really be able to hear the difference. And so can you. And that's what I want to get across in this video. Is it necessary? No. Should you go in crazy debt to own a bunch of this kind of stuff and spend a bunch of money that you don't really have to spend? No, absolutely not. Does it matter? Absolutely. And as always on this channel, what I really want is to help people make the best music possible. That's literally just always been my goal. And this is one of the reasons why I care so much about this topic, is because once you start down that path of preamps don't matter, well then maybe compressors don't matter, well then the wood your guitar is made out of doesn't matter, well the kind of monitors you're using, it doesn't matter, they're all speakers, maybe the microphones don't matter, any microphone over a couple $100 should be able to do the same thing. I mean, once you start down this path, you will end up at a place that makes your life more difficult, makes it more difficult to make good music. But there's one last thing that we haven't discussed, and that is the fun. See, not only is it fun for some of us to play with tools like this, but when you're putting your hand on a knob and making adjustments, instead of clicking with a mouse and looking at the numbers on a screen, you feel the music. You are connected to the music in a way that you just can't be with a mouse. Does that mean wonderful music can't be made in the box? That absolutely does not mean that. Some of the best music ever created never hit a single piece of hardware after it was recorded. But this stuff, to me, this is cool. This is fun. This is inspiring. I draw inspiration from these tools. When I plug into this Audioscape ASA6A and I run a vocal through that, and it sounds wildly different than this 1176, so different in character, in timbre, in EQ curve, in saturation, in how the compressor clamps. That's fun. And I get inspiration out of that when I'm like trying to find the right tool, the perfect tool for the thing that I'm trying to accomplish. That's my take. That's why I think this matters. There's links in the description down below for every single piece of gear that I have here in my studio and everything that I use and everything that I recommend. But you don't just have to pick up the things that are linked in the description down below. Anytime you guys need any piece of gear, you can jump on any video of mine whatsoever, click on any link in the description of any video. Once you're on Sweetwater's site, you can purchase literally anything that you need. Pack of guitar strings, a mic cable, or your holy grail compressor. It costs you nothing extra, but it goes a huge long ways to help me keep this channel going, help me keep trying to make educational content, steering people in the right direction to not only have a career in music if that's what they want, but make the best music that they can possibly make. And Sweetwater has been a massive, honestly, a massive part in helping me accomplish this. So thank you, Sweetwater, for sponsoring this video. Thanks to you guys for using the links in the description down below anytime you need to purchase anything. That's my take. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys are having a wonderful day. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.